I found a secret chip in my wife's purse. I read her messages with 3 different men. I pretended I knew nothing for 6 months. Meanwhile, I transferred everything to my mother's account, sold the car, and then filed for divorce without her expecting it. She was left with nothing. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. My full and real name is Ricardo Enrique. I'm 42 years old with a life intensely dedicated to building literally, brick by brick, project by project, a family civil engineering company that started modestly, humbly as a small construction firm renovating working-class homes, and grew gradually, painfully, proudly, until it became a regionally respected firm specializing in mid-range residential developments, employing 53 direct employees and indirectly supporting hundreds of families through various specialized I'm an engineer who graduated 19 years ago, working tirelessly, obsessively, sacrificially, on construction sites under brutal, scorching sun, relentless torrential rains, and impossible deadlines set by demanding, impassioned clients, while simultaneously managing complex administrative aspects, intricate finances, and suffocating bureaucracy that characterize the notoriously complicated and systematically corrupt Brazilian construction sector. For 13 absolutely dedicated, emotionally invested, and naively trusting years, I was married to Juliana Cristina Barbosa, a talented, brilliant architect I met during college when we were both idealistic students dreaming of transforming the urban landscape through innovative, sustainable architectural projects that would improve people's quality of life while respecting the fragile environment. She possessed impressively sharp intelligence, naturally refined aesthetic sense, and legitimate professional ambition that I genuinely admired, deeply respected, and unconditionally supported, even when it meant sacrificing precious time together to allow her to establish her own independent office, pursuing well-deserved professional dreams. We built together apparently, collaboratively, lovingly, not only prosperous complementary businesses where my construction company frequently executed architectural projects created by her office, generating mutually beneficial, profitable synergy, but also substantial wealth, including a large, comfortable house in a valued, safe neighborhood, to relatively new imported vehicles, diversified financial investments, and solid professional reputation, established through years of consistently delivering superior quality on time. The devastating, transformative, absolutely destroying discovery that I'm going to narrate now with every painful detail, permanently engraved in traumatized memory, began on an apparently ordinary, common afternoon with no indication of the emotional earthquake that was about to collapse on my existence like a destroying avalanche in June. When I returned unexpectedly early to the house after an important meeting with potential investors was abruptly canceled at the last minute due to a family medical emergency of the main client, my tense shoulders carrying the usual weight of financial worries about a chronically delayed project by unreliable suppliers and payments withheld by chronic defaulting clients, my mind already automatically planning the sequence of urgent phone calls necessary to resolve multiple simultaneous crises that characterized chaotic business routine. Juliana had casually mentioned during our rushed breakfast that she would spend the entire afternoon on a construction site supervising the installation of complex architectural elements that required direct on-site supervision to ensure perfect execution according to detailed technical specifications of meticulously prepared projects. I entered silently through the side door of the garage using an electronic key that opened the heavy automated gate without producing characteristic alerting sounds. Parking my sturdy utility vehicle used daily to visit geographically dispersed construction sites next to the empty space where her recently purchased imported sedan normally sat, celebrating the achievement of a particularly significant, lucrative contract with an important corporate client. The absence of the vehicle apparently confirmed her narrative about being working externally, supervising construction as alleged during our carefree morning conversation. I climbed the internal stairs, connecting the garage to the main floor of the house, carrying a heavy executive briefcase containing complex contractual documents that I planned to review carefully during the unexpected free afternoon. Hearing the characteristic silence of an unoccupied residence, except for the familiar constant hum of the central air conditioning maintaining a pleasant constant temperature regardless of the typical brutal scorching Brazilian summer heat outside. I headed automatically, routinely to the shared home office located on the second floor where we both maintained separate desks organized side by side, symbolizing collaborative professional partnership and harmoniously integrated marital life, planning to take advantage of quiet, silent hours, reviewing pending commercial proposals that required detailed, concentrated analysis impossible to perform in the noisy chaos of the construction company office, where phone calls constantly interrupted, employees urgently requested decisions, and problems arose unpredictably, incessantly. Upon entering the familiar, comforting room decorated with framed diplomas, photographs of proudly completed projects, and shelves full of specialized technical manuals accumulated during years of professional practice, I immediately noticed something visually discordant, strangely displaced, that instinctively triggered subconscious primitive alarms of imminent danger, even before consciously processing what I was abnormally observing. The expensive, elegant, and distinctive Italian leather purse that I had gifted Juliana, celebrating our 11th wedding anniversary exactly 8 months ago. Carefully chosen after weeks researching prestigious brands and timeless classic models that she would genuinely appreciate, both for superior quality and romantic symbolism of the meaningful gift, was thrown carelessly, casually over a comfortable armchair near the large window, instead of being stored organized in the spacious closet, where she meticulously kept an extensive catalogued collection of purses, shoes, and various accessories, arranged systematically by color, style, and frequency of use. Juliana was an obsessively organized, meticulously ordered person with material possessions, especially expensive valuable items that she treated with almost religious reverent care. So, seeing that specifically significant purse, abandoned, negligently awakened, irresistible, instinctive curiosity mixed with indefinable premonition that something was fundamentally, inexplicably wrong, I approached hesitantly. Curiously, the armchair where the purse rested partially open, revealing chaotic, disorganized interior containing wallet, keys, varied makeup, crumpled documents, and main cell phone that she ostensibly used for routine professional and personal communications. Something primitive, instinctive, inexplicable, impelled me to extend my hand, taking the heavy purse, examining it thoroughly, externally, looking for, I don't know exactly what, fingers automatically exploring impeccable seams, shiny metal clasps, luxurious soft genuine leather that justified the exorbitant price paid months ago. It was then, completely, accidentally, absolutely unexpectedly, that my fingers detected a subtle irregularity, minuscule discrepancy in the thickness of the satin interior lining near the secondary side pocket rarely used to store small items, a small opening amateurishly, crudely sewn with thread of slightly different coloration from the surrounding original fabric, creating a hidden, secret, falsified compartment between layers of outer and inner lining that shouldn't exist naturally in a purse originally manufactured professionally. My heart began racing uncontrollably, beating violently against my ribs like a primitive war drum, alerting imminent mortal danger. Hands trembling slightly, while nervous fingers carefully, methodically undid the amateur stitches, revealing a narrow artificial cavity intentionally hidden where something small, rectangular, definitely artificial, was deliberately concealed, secretly hidden from curious eyes like mine that should never discover the existence of that meticulously created fraudulent compartment. I carefully extracted the tiny object. A standard cell phone chip, a seemingly insignificant small piece of colored plastic and microscopic metal circuits that fit perfectly in the palm of my trembling hand, but that carried devastating potential to completely, irreversibly destroy everything I believed I knew about my apparently stable marital life, my supposedly happy marriage, my presumably faithful wife. Why would someone hide a cell phone chip secretly, elaborately, in a false compartment amateurishly sewn inside an expensive purse, unless there were hidden communications, secret conversations, clandestine relationships that absolutely could not be discovered, revealed, exposed under any possible circumstances? The question echoed incessantly, torturingly through my racing mind, processing terrifying possibilities. devastating scenarios. Innocent explanations that my desperate brain frantically tried to invent to avoid confronting the obvious horrible reality that was materializing before me like an impossible-to-rationality waking nightmare. Were there perfectly reasonable, legitimate explanations? Maybe it was an old, forgotten chip temporarily stored. Maybe related to confidential work requiring professionally separate communications. Maybe a gift from a corporate client never actually activated. Each protective rationalization sounded progressively weaker, less convincing, absolutely pathetic even to my own desperate internal ears, avoiding devastating evident truth. Glee. Urgently descended the stairs to the garage where I kept a large organizer drawer containing various tools, varied electronic cables, and obsolete technological devices accumulated over the years, including 3 old functional cell phones, sentimentally kept, instead of being environmentally responsibly discarded at appropriate specialized collection points. I grabbed the oldest, simplest, most basic model that still maintained sufficient partial charge in the worn battery after years of prolonged inactive storage, hands trembling uncontrollably while I inserted the mysterious secret chip into the appropriate compartment on the side of the worn plastic device, pressing the power button, waiting agonizingly while the screen gradually illuminated, revealing an outdated but perfectly functional operational interface. The device started automatically, processed the inserted chip, connected to the available mobile phone network, and finally, devastatingly, irreversibly displayed an initial screen showing accumulated unread messages, extensive call logs, and various communication applications strategically installed. I sat heavily, abruptly, on the cold concrete step of the garage stairs, wobbly legs refusing to adequately support body weight, irregular, choppy breathing as if I had run a strenuous marathon, cold, clammy sweat instantly sprouting on my forehead despite the central air conditioning, maintaining artificially comfortable room temperature. I opened the message application with trembling, digitally clumsy fingers, heart hammering so violently, painfully, that I briefly feared I was suffering a premature fatal heart attack like my father had fatally experienced at 53 years old, working excessively without adequate preventive medical care. The screen loaded slowly, agonizingly, revealing multiple conversations, organized chronologically. 3 main conversations immediately, screamingly standing out by intensive frequency of exchanged messages and unmistakably intimate, explicitly sexual, absolutely devastatingly romantic nature of content, brutally exposed before my incredulous eyes, refusing to accept objectively undeniable horrible reality. Conversation identified only as it contained hundreds of messages exchanged over 8 complete months, beginning exactly 2 weeks after our 11th wedding anniversary, celebrated romantically with expensive dinner at an elegant, sophisticated restaurant where we lovingly renewed vows, faithfully promising more decades together, building shared future. The messages revealed an established, intense, passionate extramarital relationship with an apparently single, financially successful man, described in detail in intimate conversations as exactly the type of man I should have chosen from the beginning. Instead of prematurely tying myself down with a workaholic obsessive engineer who prefers dusty construction sites to sophisticated romantic dinners, each message read like a sharp stab progressively, penetrating deeper into the chest, systematically tearing heart into irreparable fragments, bleeding emotionally, copiously. Conversation enigmatically identified as M was more recent, lasting only 4 months, but containing even greater intensity. Messages exchanged multiple times, daily describing graphically detailed explicit sexual encounters in a discreet hotel, regularly frequented every Tuesday and Thursday during hours that Juliana claimed to be supervising construction sites, meeting with demanding clients, or participating in networking professional events essential for continued growth of our architectural office. The devastating hypocrisy, calculated betrayal, systematic lies progressively revealed through those incriminatingly preserved digital messages were simultaneously surreal, unreal, and undeniably, objectively, photographically documented, impossible to remotely rationalize, justify, or forgive. The third conversation, marked simply as R, was chronologically older, surprisingly extending for 3 complete years, apparently beginning during the period. I was obsessively working, aggressively expanding the company, simultaneously taking on multiple contracts, frequently traveling to supervise construction sites in distant cities, returning home physically exhausted, only to sleep briefly before restarting the exhaustive cycle again. This relationship seemed to have gradually cooled, become sporadic eventually, but never completely definitively ended. Occasional messages suggesting nostalgic encounters, recalling better times when you still intensely desired me before meeting, who temporarily stole my attention. The devastating chronology revealed inescapable, horrible truth. Juliana hadn't simply committed a momentary mistake, isolated weakness, single impulsive betrayal during an understandably justifiable, vulnerable moment. She systematically, calculatedly, shamelessly maintained multiple simultaneous extramarital relationships, extending 4 years, while lovingly, convincingly, pretending to be a dedicated, faithful wife sharing a bed with me, planning fictional futures together, hypocritically celebrating fraudulent anniversaries. I read obsessively, compulsively, masochistically for endless hours, sitting on that cold garage step while the sun gradually set outside, transforming the sky into ironically romantically beautiful orange tones, cruelly contrasting with the interior emotional destruction happening simultaneously internally. Each additional message read, adding an extra layer of pain stratified over already profusely emotionally bleeding wounds. I learned devastating intimate details. She shared with lovers private marital secrets that I considered sacred confidential, cruelly ridiculed my personal habits, naturally aging physical appearance, comparatively conservative sexual preferences, bitingly criticized my obsessive dedication to work, that ironically financed the comfortable, luxurious lifestyle she enjoyed while shamelessly, systematically betraying me. I discovered that she used money from our shared joint account to pay for expensive hotels, romantic gifts for lovers, aesthetic treatments, maintaining attractive, seductive appearance to conquer multiple extramarital partners, while I sacrificed physical health, precious personal time, neglected family relationships, working 16 hours daily building wealth that she wastefully spent systematically financing her own elaborate betrayals. When I finally heard the distant, unmistakable sound of the electronic gate automatically opening, announcing her return approximately at 7:40 p.m. according to predictable usual routine, I quickly, carefully stored the old phone containing the incriminating chip in the garage organizer drawer, strategically hiding it under various tools, breathed deeply, controlling turbulent, violent emotions, threatening to explode uncontrollably, wiped sweaty face with the sleeve of my wrinkled dress shirt, and climbed the stairs, forcing a normal, neutral facial expression practiced over years negotiating complex commercial contracts, maintaining impenetrable professional poker face, regardless of extreme internally experienced pressures. In that crucial, definitive, transformative moment, I made a calculated strategic decision that would completely change the subsequent trajectory of events. I would not confront Juliana immediately, emotionally, impulsively, as the primitive instinctive part of my brain desperately screamed to do violently. Instead, I would feign absolute ignorance, complete normalcy, naive trust, while meticulously, strategically, relentlessly planning the most advantageous possible exit from this devastating situation, ensuring that when I finally revealed knowledge of her betrayals, it would be at an optimized tactical moment, maximizing financial, emotional, social impact against her, while completely protecting my own property, business, and reputational interests. That specific, particular, eternally engraved night, when Juliana returned from alleged construction supervision at 7:42 p.m. precisely according to established predictable routine, I was strategically, calculatedly, sitting on the large living room sofa, pretending to watch distractedly a television news program while my mind frantically, obsessively processed the devastating implications of recent discoveries, every cell of my body vibrating with toxic mixture of contained rage, processed betrayal, and growing determination not to react impulsively, emotionally, as a wounded primitive man might instinctively do. She entered through the front door, carrying an elegant executive briefcase and expensive designer purse that I had gifted her the previous anniversary, smiling tiredly, but apparently genuinely that practiced expression of exhausted professional after a productive day working intensely. Kissing my face distractedly while murmuring something about a difficult client demanding multiple revisions of a complex architectural project. Her convincing performance so perfectly calibrated, rehearsed that any external observer would completely believe the fabricated narrative presented naturally. How was your day, love? Did you manage to resolve those problems with the materials supplier that was worrying you yesterday? She asked casually, interestedly, while depositing belongings on the entrance console and headed to the kitchen seeking cold water. I forced a neutral, controlled smile, practiced during years negotiating commercial contracts, maintaining professional composure regardless of, internally, experienced pressures, responding automatically. Mechanically, we partially resolved it. The supplier agreed to deliver materials with compensatory discount for the chronological delay that's compromising the main construction schedule. Each pronounced word sounded strangely distant, artificial to my own ears, as if another person were speaking, using my voice while I observed the interaction from an external dissociated perspective. But Juliana apparently didn't notice anything abnormal, unusual in my response or behavior, because she was absorbed checking messages on her ostensible main cell phone while drinking water directly from the plastic bottle, ignoring available clean glasses on the nearby shelf. I observed her discreetly, analytically, like a scientist studying an unknown specimen through a powerful microscope, noting previously ignored, unconsidered details. The way fingers slid quickly, anxiously over the cell phone screen checking recent communications, fleeting micro-expression of satisfaction when she apparently read something pleasant in received messages, tiny involuntary smile, curving corners of lips momentarily before recovering neutral professional composure. Who was sending messages at that specific moment that provoked that subtle but unmistakably satisfied reaction? Was it the lover she described as exactly the type of man I should have chosen? Or perhaps M, with whom she regularly met Tuesdays and Thursdays at a discreet hotel while claiming to supervise non-existent construction sites? Or possibly R, the older 3-year relationship that apparently continued sporadically despite new parallel romantic interests competing for her limited attention? The following 2 weeks unfolded in falsified superficial normalcy while internally I methodically, strategically processed the next necessary steps to protect my property, business, reputational interests before confronting Juliana with irrefutable evidence of her systematic betrayals. I maintained predictable usual routine, visiting construction sites daily, meeting with potential clients, supervising employee teams. But mentally I was constantly obsessively planning a calculated exit strategy that would minimize financial damages while maximizing emotional, social impact on her when I finally revealed complete knowledge of the multiple documented infidelities digitally preserved, incriminatingly on that secret chip elaborately hidden. During this externally, apparently normal but internally intensely turbulent period, I began discreetly, methodically documenting absolutely everything related to our shared wealth. I systematically photographed all rooms of the house, capturing furniture, appliances, artwork, valuable decorative objects acquired jointly during 13 years of apparently stable marriage, meticulously compiled bank statements from joint accounts, identifying patterns of suspicious spending that I had previously naively ignored, attributing to legitimate professional expenses from her architectural office, thoroughly catalogued various financial investments, including mutual funds, corporate stocks, government bonds patiently accumulated representing comfortably planned joint retirement future years ago when I still naively believed in us as a permanent indissoluble unit. I researched extensively, obsessively, during sleepless early mornings, when Juliana slept peacefully, unconsciously beside me, about complicated Brazilian matrimonial legislation governing division of assets in contentious divorce cases, progressively, alarmingly discovering that under the partial community property regime automatically established when we married without elaborating a specific prenuptial agreement, practically everything acquired during marriage would be divided equitably 50% to each spouse, regardless of who proportionally contributed more financially to accumulated property acquisition. The discovery was simultaneously enraging and motivating. It meant that Juliana would automatically, legally receive half of absolutely everything built primarily through my obsessive, sacrificial work, while she apparently dedicated time, energy, shared financial resources, maintaining multiple elaborate, systematically extramarital relationships. But there was potentially, strategically, an exploitable, complicated legal solution. If I could judicially, provably demonstrate that Juliana had seriously violated fundamental marital duties through systematic, prolonged adultery, I could persuasively argue for disproportionate property division, significantly favoring the unjustly, cruelly betrayed spouse. However, to build a robust, incontestable legal case, I would need substantial, irrefutable evidence documenting not only infidelities, but also demonstrating direct financial impact of betrayals on shared marital wealth. The secret chip containing incriminating messages was a promising start, but I would need much more complementary, corroborative evidence to convince a typically conservative family court judge, traditionally reluctant to severely punish adultery through drastically disproportionate property divisions. It was then, precisely in this moment of intense strategic reflection, that I contacted my brother Mauricio, experienced attorney, specializing in family law with 15 years of accumulated legal career, dealing with complex, contentious divorces involving substantial assets and combative spouses determined to mutually legally destroy each other. Mauricio had always subtly distrusted Juliana since initial introduction years ago, never explicitly verbalizing reservations to avoid unnecessary family conflicts, but occasionally making oblique questioning comments about her apparently luxurious lifestyle, disproportionate to declared income from her modest architectural office. We met discreetly, confidentially at a distant cafe, far from usual locations routinely frequented where multiple acquaintances might casually recognize us and report suspicious meeting to Juliana, prematurely alerting her about secretly initiated investigations. Mauricio, I need urgent, confidential legal consultation about extremely delicate, complicated matrimonial situation that I recently discovered and am still emotionally processing. I began hesitantly, uncomfortably after we ordered double espresso coffees that would arrive providing natural conversational cover for planned sensitive discussion. Mauricio leaned forward immediately, instantly recognizing professional seriousness in my tense voice, controlled but visibly disturbed facial expression, penetrating brown eyes, trained to identify lies, evasions, focusing intensely on my face, awaiting imminent, significant revelation. Ricardo, we're bros. Before any professional relationship, you can absolutely trust my confidential discretion and accumulated legal expertise. What's happening? He responded firmly, professionally, low conspiratorial voice, appropriate for potentially exposed public environment with unwanted curious ears. I breathed deeply, controlledly before chronologically, thoroughly narrating the accidental discovery of the elaborately hidden secret chip, devastating reading of messages exchanged with 3 different lovers simultaneously, shocking revelations about regular programmed encounters while she claimed to be working, supervising complex architectural construction sites, use of joint funds financing, expensive hotels, and romantic gifts for extramarital partners, while I sacrificed physical health working 6 hours daily building wealth that she systematically wasted, shamelessly betraying me. Mauricio listened silently, impassively, occasionally noting critical observations in a small professional notebook he always carried prepared for unexpected, impromptu legal consultations, facial expression maintaining trained professional neutrality, although eyes revealed growing solidarity rage with cruelly wronged brother. Ricardo first. I'm deeply, sincerely sorry that you're going through this devastating betrayal. No spouse deserves to be treated so disrespectfully, cruelly, by a person who promised fidelity, loyalty before multiple witnesses in formal matrimonial ceremony. He began compassionately but quickly transitioned to professional analytical mode. Second, legally speaking, you have solid, substantial grounds for contentious divorce, with specific cause of documentally proven adultery through digitally preserved evidence. However, we need to be strategic, methodical, building the most robust possible case before initiating formal procedures, because once Juliana is officially notified about divorce action, she immediately hire a competent attorney who will aggressively advise protecting her financial interests, potentially quickly hiding or transferring accessible assets before judicial blocks are effectively implemented. His words confirmed, validated strategic instincts that I had independently developed during preceding weeks of obsessive reflection planning, carefully calculated next moves. Mauricio, that's exactly why I didn't confront her immediately when I discovered the betrayals. I want to meticulously plan a strategy that maximally protects my property, business interests. Before revealing knowledge of her infidelities, I explained determinedly, firmly, what do you specifically suggest tactics I should implement immediately to strengthen legal position before initiating formal divorce procedures? I questioned urgently, anxiously, seeking specialized professional guidance, navigating completely unknown, emotionally, legally complex territory to me previously. Mauricio thought silently, calculatedly, for long moments while sipping strong espresso coffee, fingers rhythmically drumming on the worn wooden table revealing characteristic nervous habit when mentally processing complex legal problems. First, absolutely critical, make multiple complete copies of all digital evidence contained on that secret chip immediately today. Save redundant backups in separate physical locations. Secure cloud storage, protected by strong, unique passwords. Multiple electronic devices stored separately. If you lose these evidences through accident, theft, or deliberate destruction by Juliana, if she discovers you lose primary foundation for arguing her exclusive guilt justifying favorable property division, he instructed firmly, authoritatively. Second, immediately begin discreetly, gradually transferring funds from joint accounts to an individual exclusive account of yours, preferably a new account opened specifically for this purpose at a different banking institution where Juliana has no access or visibility over your financial movements. Don't completely suddenly empty accounts, because that would immediately alert her about your knowledge of betrayals, awakening suspicions, but transfer 20 to 30% monthly during the next 2 to 3 months, presenting plausible justifications if questioned about gradual reductions in available balances, he continued methodically, strategically. Third, meticulously, photographically document all valuable movable goods in shared residence, expensive furniture, appliances, artwork, jewelry, electronics. Create detailed inventory with updated current market values, because it's not uncommon for suddenly discovered, betrayed spouse to vindictively remove, hide, or destroy valuable properties before formal property division processes are judicially completed, he added pragmatically. Experienced with typical destructive behaviors of acrimoniously combative, contentious divorces. Fourth, seriously consider hiring a professional, discreet, private investigator to additionally document her infidelities through direct physical surveillance, compromising photographs, entering, exiting hotels with lovers, vehicular movement tracking, detailed telephone record verification. The more independent, corroborated evidence you accumulate demonstrating systematic pattern of prolonged betrayals, the stronger the legal argument for disproportionate property division, significantly favoring you. Mauricio suggested strategically, professionally. Fifth, absolutely crucial, don't perceptibly alter usual behavior, continue normal routines, maintain appearance of satisfactorily functioning marriage. Don't emotionally confront Juliana about discoveries or demonstrate anger, resentment through body language, sarcastic comments, sudden emotional coldness. If she suspects you've discovered betrayals, she immediately take defensive measures, protecting her financial interests, potentially destroying additional accessible evidence, alerting lovers to create coordinated defensive stories, denying extramarital relationships, claiming you're inventing false accusations, motivated by irrational paranoia or desire to manipulatively manipulate divorce processes advantageously. He warned seriously, emphatically. Mauricio's strategic instructions were simultaneously pragmatically sensible and emotionally challenging to implement daily. It meant continuing to live an elaborate lie, pretending happy ignorance while internally processing devastating betrayal, meticulously planning calculated destruction of the externally apparently stable fraudulent marriage. But I rationally, strategically recognized that a patient, disciplined approach would produce superior results compared to impulsive emotional confrontation that would momentarily satisfy primitive vindictive needs, but ultimately substantially harm my financial interests through standard equitable property division, equally favoring adulterous spouse and cruelly wronged betrayed spouse. I returned home that afternoon, carrying the heavy invisible weight of secret knowledge and elaborate conspiratorial plans. Finding Juliana working concentratedly at the shared home office desk reviewing complex, architectural plans spread chaotically, soft classical music playing discreetly through built-in speakers, creating normal, productive, professional atmosphere. She briefly raised her eyes, smiling tiredly when I entered, murmuring "Hi, love" distractedly before returning attention to complex technical documents, completely unaware, blissfully ignorant, that the man standing in the doorway silently observing her was no longer the naive, trusting husband but a calculated strategist meticulously planning systematic dismantlement of the apparently solidly built shared life during 13 years, but recently revealed as founded on elaborate lies, systematic betrayals, flagrant disrespect for sacred matrimonial vows solemnly pronounced years ago. That specific night, lying awake in the marital bed beside Juliana sleeping peacefully, unconsciously, regular rhythmic breathing of a person without worries weighing conscience, I contemplated the dark ceiling processing cruel ironies of the surreal situation. The woman who promised to love me exclusively, faithfully, was simultaneously romantically, sexually involved with 3 different men while maintaining convincing facade of professionally ambitious, dedicated wife. How does someone so completely, efficiently compartmentalize multiple existences without apparently experiencing paralyzing guilt, consuming remorse, or constant fear of eventual inevitable discovery? Her psychological capacity for emotional dissociation, calculated manipulation, was simultaneously professionally impressive and personally terrifying. During subsequent following weeks, I meticulously implemented each strategic recommendation provided by Maurice. I secretly smuggled the incriminating chip to his office, where a digital forensic technician created multiple legally certified copies, admissible as judicial evidence, preserving original metadata proving unquestionable authenticity. Opened a new bank account at a distant financial institution, gradually transferring 25% of joint funds monthly, justifying withdrawals as investments in temporary business opportunities. If Juliana eventually questioned about perceptible reductions in available balances, meticulously photographed each residential room, documenting complete inventory of jointly acquired valuable properties during marriage, establishing permanent visual record, protecting against potential future vindictive removals. Most significantly, strategically, I hired private investigator Carlos Rodriguez, experienced, discreet professional, emphatically recommended by Mauricio, with 25 years of accumulated experience in discreet physical surveillance and delicate matrimonial investigations. Carlos was an impressive, intimidating man of 49 years, former military with permanent, rigid ramrod posture, light brown hair kept militarily shaved, cold gray eyes constantly assessing surrounding environments, identifying potential threats, escapee roads tactical advantages automatically unconsciously through deeply internalized irreversibly military training. We initially met in an isolated shopping mall parking lot far from usual frequented locations where casual recognition would be unlikely, sitting in his vehicle conversing confidentially while he incessantly smoked generic cigarettes despite signs prohibiting smoking. Mr. Almeida, your brother Mauricio preliminarily explained your situation involving a wife apparently maintaining multiple simultaneous extramarital relationships. I need you to provide additional specific details. Recent photographs of your wife, allowing quick visual identification during physical surveillance. Detailed description of the vehicle she drives, including make, model, color, license plate, typical daily routines including departure times, frequent destinations, predictable behavioral patterns that will facilitate efficient discrete tracking. Carlos instructed professionally, methodically, deep monotone voice, suggesting emotional indifference, but alert, penetrating eyes, revealing genuine professional interest in the presented investigative challenge. I provided requested information thoroughly, completely, showed recent photographs of Juliana stored on cell phone captured during various social events, precisely described the imported sedan she drove daily for alleged professional appointments. Chronologically reported typical weekly routines, including morning departures at 8 o'clock for the architectural office, followed by variable evening returns between 7 and 9 p.m. depending on alleged client appointments. I specifically mentioned Tuesdays and Thursdays, when digital messages on the secret chip indicated regular meetings, with lover M at a discreet hotel unspecified location, but presumably near the central commercial area where her office operated. Perfect. I'll begin discreet physical surveillance immediately tomorrow, Tuesday morning parking, proximately to our architectural office. Will discreetly follow the vehicle when departing, tracking actual destinations, comparing with itineraries allegedly provided to you previously. Will photographically document any compromising encounters with third-party men. Will verify hotel entry, exit records through confidential contacts strategically cultivated in local hotel industry. Carlos explained methodically. Strategically. My rate is $200 per hour. Active surveillance plus reasonable operational expenses, including fuel, parking, occasionally modest bribes for necessary informants, obtaining privileged confidential information. Conservative estimates suggests approximately 8 hours daily surveillance during 5 weekly days will produce substantial evidence within 2 to 3 weeks, demonstrating systematic behavioral pattern of prolonged infidelities. The projected cost was significant, approximately $8,000 to $10,000 monthly, but considering total wealth accumulated during 13 years of marriage, valued approximately at $2.5 million, including house, vehicles, various financial investments, and valuable participation in family construction company. Relatively modest investment in robust evidence justifying disproportionate property division, significantly favoring me, would be financially, emotionally, broadly worthwhile. I immediately, gratefully agreed with proposed terms, authorizing Carlos to begin comprehensive investigation immediately, signing standardized service contract establishing absolute confidentiality, legally protecting both parties. The subsequent following 3 weeks were a surreal, dissociative period existing simultaneously in contradictory parallel realities. Externally, superficially, I maintained appearance of normally functioning marriage, participating in social dinners with mutual clients, casually discussing future home renovation plans, watching television programs together on the shared sofa, pretending interest in trivial fictional dramatic plots while my mind obsessively processed progressive investigative reports from Carlos, methodically, photographically documenting Juliana's systematic infidelities, irrefutably proving original suspicions based on digital messages from the accidentally discovered secret chip. Carlos worked meticulously, tirelessly, like a patient predator tracking elusive prey, discreetly followed Juliana during 19 consecutive days, documenting complete daily routines, confirmed regular Tuesday and Thursday meetings with a man subsequently identified as M. Marcelo Ferreira Santos, divorced 46-year-old businessman, owner of an established automotive dealership at a discreet boutique hotel, strategically located in a busy commercial neighborhood where anonymity was easily maintained among busy passing crowds, completely ignoring couples frequently entering, exiting. Professionally captured telescopic photographs unmistakably showed Juliana and Marcella entering the hotel separately minutes apart, maintaining apparent discretion, remaining internally approximately 2 to 3 hours before separately emerging again, occasionally stopping briefly outside, exchanging passionate kisses, intimate embraces, before separating, driving respective vehicles, returning supposedly to legitimate professional activities. Additionally, provably, Carlos documented frequent prolonged lunches with another man, identified as a Andre Luis Costa, single 40-year-old architect partner in a rival competing architectural firm, at expensive, sophisticated restaurants where interactions observed through exterior windows clearly suggested well-established romantic intimacy. Hands intertwined over tables, closely intimate bodily leanings, shared exclusive smiles, occasionally discreet quick kisses when they believed themselves unobserved by inattentive surrounding witnesses. The third relationship with our proved more sporadic, irregular but Carlos eventually documented a single encounter with a man identified as Roberto Mendez Silva, recently divorced, 44-year-old university professor, at an obscure artisanal cafe located in a distant Bohemian neighborhood where probability of casual encounters with mutual acquaintances was strategically minimized. The final investigative report compiled by Carlos, after 3 weeks of intensive surveillance, contained 347 dated, digitally timestamped photographs providing irrefutable visual evidence of multiple encounters with 3 different men. Detailed analyses of behavioral patterns demonstrating systematicity. Obvious not isolated impulsive events, explainable as forgivable momentary weaknesses. Hotel entry, exit records obtained through confidential contacts, confirming regular reservations under false names paid with corporate credit card from her architectural office, signifying that she was literally using business funds, legitimately destined for professional expenses, to systematically finance illicit extramarital encounters. When Carlos personally delivered the complete investigative dossier, professionally bound in a thick executive folder during a final meeting in the familiar isolated parking lot, the physical weight of the document symbolically reflected the emotional weight of internally contained revelations. Irrefutable photographic evidence, provably confirming every suspicion, fear, intuition that I had desperately tried to rationalize, minimize, dismiss as irrational paranoia during preceding weeks of initial discovery. Mr. Almeida, I sincerely regret confirming that your suspicions were completely justified. Substantiated. Your wife systematically maintains multiple simultaneous extramarital relationships, demonstrating prolongedly established behavioral pattern, not to isolated momentary errors, Carlos said respectfully, compassionately. Usual professionalism tempered by genuine human empathy, recognizing inevitable pain that revelations would inevitably cause. I thanked Carlos sincerely, deeply, for meticulous, professional work executed discreetly without prematurely alerting Juliana about secretly conducted investigations, paid the entire owed balance transferring electronic funds to his bank account, shook his firm hand warmly, thanking exceptionally provided services, and drove back home carrying the heavy executive folder containing devastating evidence that would definitively seal the fate of my fraudulent marriage. That night, alone again in the home office, while Juliana allegedly participated in a professional networking event at a downtown hotel that was probably a covert meeting with one of the photographically documented lovers, I slowly, reverently opened the folder like an archaeologist discovering a precious ancient artifact and began systematically reviewing each photograph, each record, each behavioral analysis meticulously compiled during weeks of dedicated surveillance. The images were simultaneously clarifyingly liberating and emotionally devastating. Juliana discreetly entering the hotel, cautiously looking around, verifying absence of known witnesses before crossing the elegant revolving door. Marcelo discreetly waiting in the luxurious lobby, pretending to read a newspaper, but clearly watching the entrance, awaiting her safe signal. Both briefly meeting near the elevators, exchanging intimate complicit smiles before separately ascending, maintaining deceptive appearances, emerging hours later with slightly disheveled clothes, suggestively messed hair, satisfied, satiated facial expressions of people who had just consummated passionate physical intimacies. Other photographs captured romantic lunches with Andre, where their body language unmistakably screamed prolongedly established intimacy, him feeding her a forkful of expensive dessert while she smiled seductively, fingers intertwined over immaculate white tablecloth. Bodily leanings eliminating physical space between them, suggesting comfortable, intimate familiarity developed over months of secret relationship. Each image represented a distinct betrayal, specific lie, stolen moment from our supposedly exclusively shared marital life, but progressively revealed as an elaborate farce, where I was the naive unconscious protagonist, performing the role of dedicated faithful husband while she orchestrated a complex network of parallel relationships consuming time, energy, emotional resources that should be exclusively invested in our marriage. The rage I initially felt upon discovering the secret chip gradually transformed during subsequent weeks into something colder, calculated, strategic, iron determination to guarantee that when the inevitable final confrontation occurred, it would be on terms completely favorable to me, maximizing financial, emotional, social impact on her while integrally protecting my interests. Mauricio organized a crucial strategic meeting at his impeccably organized law office on a dark, rainy August afternoon when the loaded sky perfectly reflected the internal emotional turbulence I constantly experienced despite maintaining deceptively stable, calm external facade. Also present was Dr. Helena, renowned 53-year-old criminal defense attorney with 30 years of impeccable legal career, additionally specialized in property crimes and marital fraud. An impressive, formidable woman of commanding presence who instantly dominated any room through a combination of penetrating, sharp intelligence, vast accumulated experience, and unwavering confidence earned through numerous well-documented judicial victories. She possessed impeccably cared-for, gleaming black skin, natural curly hair maintained in an elegant professional hairstyle that added imposing height, sharp, dark brown eyes like surgical instruments that seemed to instantly catalog every relevant detail of surrounding environment, identifying weaknesses, tactical advantages, automatically. Mr. Almeida, your brother Mauricio, preliminarily briefed me about your matrimonial situation involving a wife, maintaining multiple extramarital relationships extensively documented through digital evidence and professional physical surveillance. I carefully reviewed all provided materials, including preserved messages from the secret chip and photographic dossier compiled by investigator Carlos. Frankly, honestly, I rarely encounter cases with such substantial, irrefutable documentation proving systematic, prolonged adultery. Dr. Helena began professionally, authoritatively, deep contralto voice commanding immediate, complete attention. You've built an extremely strong case, fundamenting not only contentious divorce with specific cause, but potentially also criminal actions related to misappropriation of marital resources, financing illicit extramarital relationships. Her words validated the patient discipline strategy I had meticulously followed during preceding months, instead of impulsively emotionally confronting Juliana when I initially discovered betrayals through the accidentally found secret chip. Dr. Helena, my primary objective is to maximally protect my property interests, considering I disproportionately contributed more financially to asset accumulation during marriage, while she apparently dedicated significant resources maintaining secret parallel relationships. Secondarily, I desire that she experience appropriate social, professional, emotional consequences proportional to the severity of calculatedly perpetrated systematic betrayals during years. I explained determinedly, firmly, clearly articulating strategic priorities established after prolonged deep reflection. Dr. Helena smiled appreciatively, approvingly, like a predator recognizing similar hunting instinct in unexpected ally. Excellent. Clarity of objectives enormously facilitates construction of effective legal strategy, maximizing probability of favorable outcomes. Let's discuss specific, immediately implementable tactics and coordinated legal action timeline, she said, opening a thin silver laptop, extracting various complex legal documents from methodically organized executive folder. First, we need to protect your business assets related to the family construction company. Although the company was established before marriage, substantial value growth occurred during the matrimonial period, making property increment potentially equitably divisible under the prevailing partial community property regime. I strongly recommend immediate corporate restructuring, transferring your partnership participation to a family holding controlled by your mother Marguerite, establishing clear legal separation between personal marital wealth and pre-existing family business assets. The suggestion was simultaneously strategically brilliant and operationally complex, requiring careful coordination with business accountants, specialized corporate attorneys, and my mother Marguerite, who would need to consent to participate in the elaborate property protective strategy. Second, I recommend immediate sale of the jointly registered imported vehicle in both spouses, names converting easily concealable or vindictively destroyable physical asset into quickly transferable liquid resources to accounts protected and accessible to Juliana. Present plausible justification for sale as necessity of operational capital for company, facing temporary challenging cash flow due to delayed payments from defaulting clients. Completely credible narrative considering known volatility of civil construction sector, she continued methodically, strategically. Crucially important, establish precise timeline for final confrontation and formal initiation of contentious divorce procedures. Timing is absolutely critical because we want to maximize quantity of transferred protected assets before Juliana is officially notified about divorce action, awakening her defensive instincts, motivating quick concealment of her own accessible resources. I recommend waiting minimally 2 more months, systematically implementing additional property transfers, protective corporate restructurings, complementary documentations, strengthening case before detonating devastating legal nuclear bomb over her existence. Dr. Helena explained emphatically, seriously. The subsequent following 2 months were the most intense, stressful, emotionally challenging period I experienced during entire adult life, externally. I maintained appearance of marital normalcy, participating in usual domestic routines, joint professional, social events, casual discussions about fictional future plans, while internally, I systematically orchestrated calculated dismantlement of shared marital wealth transferring resources, protecting assets, building impenetrable legal fortifications that would guarantee complete victory when the inevitable eventual final confrontation occurred. The necessary duplicity was psychologically exhausting. Smiling lovingly at Juliana during romantic dinners, knowing that hours before she was probably in the arms of Marcelu or Andre, casually discussing home renovation plans, knowing that in weeks I would file devastating divorce proceedings, mechanically kissing her before sleeping, knowing that her body had been intimately shared with multiple different men systematically. I visited my mother, Marguerite, on a sunny Sunday afternoon at her small, comfortable house, where she lived modestly but dignifiedly in retirement. After 40 years dedicated to public children's education, forming generations of young children, she was a formidable, resilient woman of 67 years who raised 2 children alone after being prematurely widowed when my father died of fatal heart attack at 48 years old, leaving a financially vulnerable but emotionally united young family. Marguerite possessed deep maternal wisdom accumulated through decades navigating multiple adversities, always maintaining intact dignity, unwavering moral values, and unconditional love for dedicatedly raised children despite frequently challenging circumstances. One explained thoroughly, chronologically, the devastating matrimonial situation. Discovery of the secret chip, reading of incriminating messages, hiring of investigator photographically documenting systematic infidelities, legal consultation with Mauricio and Dr. Helena planning proper to protect her divorce strategy. Marguerite listened silently, patiently, without interrupting during entire 40 minutes, while I narrated the complete story, omitting only the most explicitly sexual details of messages to preserve respectful decorum appropriate for discussing delicate, intimate matters with mother. When I finally finished, she sighed deeply, lengthy as if exhaling weight, vicariously accumulated through painful narrative, reached across the small kitchen table, firmly holding my trembling hands between her strong, calloused hands from decades of arduous domestic manual labor. Ricardo, my beloved son, I deeply regret that you're going through such devastating, cruel betrayal, perpetrated by a woman who solemnly promised to faithfully, exclusively love you. No mother wishes to see her son suffer intense emotional pain, but I'm also immensely proud of the maturity, rationality, disciplined strategy you've demonstrated responding to discovery instead of reacting impulsively destructively, she said calmly, lovingly, deep brown eyes shining with contained tears of genuine maternal compassion. As for my participation in the property protective strategy proposed by your attorneys, I absolutely, unconditionally agree to help any necessary way protecting legacy patiently built during decades of your and your late father's dedicated work. The construction company was initiated by your father before dying prematurely. You honorably expanded modest business, transforming it into regionally respected enterprise, employing dozens of dependent families. This business patrimony shouldn't be equitably divided with a woman who minimally contributed to real growth while wastefully spending resources financing elaborate systematic betrayals, she declared determinedly, firmly, with unwavering conviction characteristic of her when defending family against perceived injustice, with enthusiastic consent and integral support from Marguerite. Specialized corporate attorneys, hired by Mauricio, executed complex restructuring, establishing a new family holding where my partnership participation in the construction company was formally transferred to a corporate structure nominally controlled by Marguerite but with specific contractual clauses. I maintained complete operational control of strategic decisions, while legal ownership resided in a legally distinct entity, separate from divisible marital wealth. The operation was meticulously executed, strictly following applicable tax, corporate legislation, avoiding any irregularity that could be subsequently contested by Juliana's attorneys, alleging intentional property transfer fraud. Simultaneously, I listed the imported vehicle for quick sale through a specialized dealership, claiming to Juliana that the company faced temporary challenging cash flow, requiring liquidation of non-essential assets to cover urgent operational expenses, including employee payroll and critical supplier payments. She accepted the explanation without significantly questioning, apparently relieved that business financial problems wouldn't directly affect her comfortable personal luxurious lifestyle because I discreetly transferred sufficient funds, maintaining joint accounts with deceptively stably apparently normal balances. The vehicle sold quickly for fair market value, and I received electronic transfer of $230,000 that I immediately deposited in a new account, opened exclusively in my name at a different banking institution where Juliana had no visibility or access whatsoever. In addition to strategically implemented property protections, Dr. Helena strongly recommended meticulously documenting my behavioral pattern, demonstrating I was a dedicated, faithful spouse, fulfiller of matrimonial obligations, while Juliana systematically violated marital vows through multiple prolonged infidelities. I chronologically compiled records demonstrating my consistent dedication. Receipts for expensive gifts purchased celebrating anniversaries. Special dates, including that Italian purse where, ironically, she hid the secret chip. Photographs of romantic trips organized by me, surprising her with expensive exotic destinations. Records of substantial financial transfers to her business account, supporting establishment and growth of the architectural office. Written testimonies from multiple mutual friends, professional colleagues, family members attesting to my integrity, character, exemplary marital dedication, and consistently respectful behavior throughout 13 years of marriage. Mauricio and Dr. Helena worked collaboratively during weeks building a masterful initial contentious divorce petition spanning 143 densely documented legal pages, including detailed chronology of marriage from initial meeting during college to devastating discovery of systemic betrayals, detailed description of each identified extramarital relationship with complete names of lovers, specific dates of photographically documented encounters, financial analysis demonstrating use of marital resources, financing infidelities through hotel payments, expensive restaurants, romantic gifts for extramarital partners, robust legal argumentation, fundamenting request for disproportionate property division, significantly favoring me based on irrefutably demonstrated exclusive guilt through substantial documentary, digital, and photographic evidence, additional request for moral damages indemnification, quantified at $500,000, compensating intense emotional suffering, social humiliation, and psychological trauma caused by calculated systematic betrayal. The petition was an impressive legal work of art, combining impeccable technical precision with convincing emotional narrative, humanizing abstract legal situation through specific vivid details, making it impossible for any judge to read the document without feeling deep empathy for the cruelly, unjustly betrayed spouse. Dr. Helena strategically included carefully selected excerpts from digitally preserved messages from the secret chip as evidentiary, demonstrating explicit prolonged nature of extramarital relationships, reproducing specific particularly devastating phrases where Juliana cruelly ridiculed my personal habits, physical appearance, obsessive professional dedication to lovers who probably found depreciatory comments amusingly entertaining, casual entertainment at my humiliating emotional expense. Finally, after 2.5 months of intensive, meticulous preparation, the definitive moment arrived for final confrontation to formally initiate devastating divorce proceedings. It was a melancholy rainy Friday in October when nature seemed to appropriately conspire, creating somber atmosphere reflecting gravity of monumental event about to irreversibly occur, transforming existences permanently. I strategically planned timing. Juliana was scheduled to return from a 3-day work trip supervising installation of a complex architectural project in a neighboring city, would arrive home approximately at 7 p.m. according to casual text message communicated earlier. I arranged for a process server to be discreetly waiting parked on the nearby street, ready to deliver formal notification as soon as she arrived, maximizing shock impact upon receiving unexpected legal documents. Immediately after returning from exhausting trip when she would be tired, vulnerable, less defensively prepared. Adityonaji, I synchronously coordinated with Mauricio for me to be physically absent from residence during notification delivery, avoiding potentially volatile, dangerous emotional confrontation that could complicate subsequent legal procedures through fabricated false accusations of threats, violence, or inappropriate behavior. Instead, I temporarily established myself in a small monthly rented furnished apartment, strategically located near the construction company office, allowing me to continue business operations normally, while maintaining safe physical distance from Juliana during the initial turbulent, volatile post-notification period, when emotions would inevitably be explosively, intensely exalted. At precisely 7:17 p.m., I received a text message from the process server, confirming that notification had been personally delivered to Juliana, who apparently became visibly shocked, confused, emotional upon receiving the official envelope containing extensive divorce petition and voluminous attached evidentiary documentation. Minutes later, my cell phone began vibrating incessantly with consecutive calls from her that I systematically ignored, allowing them to go directly to voicemail, quickly followed by a flood of progressively more disparate, confused, angry text messages demanding urgent explanations, begging that I call immediately to discuss terrible misunderstanding that certainly must exist, because obviously I couldn't really be requesting divorce based on absurd, unfounded accusations of infidelities that she categorically, vehemently denied. I read messages coldly, analytically, without immediately responding as specifically instructed by Dr. Helena, who emphatically warned, avoid any direct communication with Juliana during initial post-notification period, allowing devastating shock of discovery that I knew about her betrayals and had meticulously planned. Devastating legal response to completely establish itself before any dialogue occurred exclusively through appropriate legal representation. The messages rapidly evolved through psychologically predictable emotional stages: initial absolute denial claiming grotesque error, colossal misunderstanding, explosive rage accusing me of irrational paranoia, inventing delusional fantasies, motivated by unfounded pathological jealousy, desperate bargaining, begging opportunity to personally explain everything, promising there were perfectly innocent, reasonable explanations for any distortedly presented evidence, depression manifesting through melodramatic messages threatening self-destruction if I persisted in destroying marriage based on maliciously fabricated false suspicions. Eventually, approximately 3 hours after initial notification, when presumably she had completely read extensive divorce petition and reviewed evidentiary appendices, including compromising photographs of her entering, exiting hotels with nominally identified lovers, and selected excerpts from digitally preserved messages from the secret chip she believed was perpetually safely hidden. The tone of messages drastically changed, becoming simultaneously more calculatedly strategic and subtly threatening. She would hire better, more aggressive attorneys who would destroy my fraudulent case, demonstrating that evidence was illegally obtained, invading her privacy, violating fundamental constitutional rights, would fight ferociously for half of absolutely everything, including the family construction company that she would claim to have significantly contributed to growth through architectural consultancy, provided free during years, would ruin my professional reputation, widely disseminating through social networks and local media that I was an abusive, controlling, paranoid husband who fabricated false infidelity accusations to justify cruelly calculated property theft. The empty, desperate threats only strengthened my resolve to relentlessly proceed with devastating, contentious divorce, because they clearly revealed her true character when confronted irrefutably with consequences of own actions. Instead of accepting responsibility, demonstrating genuine remorse, she immediately defensively attacked, trying to invert narrative, transforming herself from guilty perpetrator to falsely accused, unjustly victimized. I forwarded all messages to Dr. Helena, who strategically incorporated them into the growing dossier, additionally demonstrating manipulative behavioral pattern characteristic of narcissistic personality, incapable of accepting guilt or responsibility for own destructive actions. Mauricio scheduled a preliminary judicial hearing for 3 subsequent weeks where both parties would appear before family court judge, presenting initial arguments, formally establishing respective positions. During the period preceding hearing, Juliana predictably hired an attorney known for combative aggressiveness and morally questionable, though technically, legal tactics, Dr. Rogério Fonseca, a 59-year-old man with controversial reputation for defending indefensible clients through dilatory procedural maneuvers and systematic personal attacks against adversary parties attempting to discredit them before courts. Mauricio and Dr. Helena correctly anticipated this strategic choice of hers and meticulously prepared to confront predictable tactics that Dr. Ruggiero would inevitably employ, attempting to divert attention from substantial evidence of systemic adultery, focusing instead on fabricated allegations of privacy invasion, psychological abuse, and calculated financial manipulation on my part. The preliminary hearing occurred on an ironically cheerfully sunny November morning at the Civil Forum, located in an architecturally significant imposing building but internally deteriorated by decades of chronic budgetary neglect. Narrow corridors crowded with hurried attorneys carrying voluminous briefcases, anxious clients nervously awaiting calls, overworked public employees processing bureaucratically complex, endless paperwork. The judge responsible for the case was Dr. Silvia Rodriguez, respected 63-year-old magistrate with 35 years of impeccable judicial career, known for decisions rigorously founded on objective evidence instead of dramatic emotional appeals, reputation for inflexible impartiality, and absolute intolerance for dilatory procedural maneuvers, wasting chronically overloaded court's precious time. I arrived at court, accompanied by Mauricio and Dr. Helena, conservatively dressed in discreet dark suit, transmitting serious appropriate professional respectability for solemn occasion, maintaining externally calm composure, despite understandable internal nervousness considering magnitude of permanently life-transforming event. Juliana arrived minutes later, accompanied by Dr. Ruggiero, elegantly dressed in navy blue suit that enhanced sophisticated professional appearance. Makeup perfectly applied, disguising signs of recent emotional stress. Defensive body posture revealing underlying vulnerability, masked by artificially fabricated confidence facade. Our eyes briefly met across the busy corridor, and I saw in them complex mixture of contained rage, ironically perceived betrayal, palpable fear of imminent consequences, and bitter resentment that I had dared to publicly challenge her, exposing systematically carefully guarded secrets. The hearing began punctually with Judge Silvia authoritatively presiding, requesting that both parties succinctly present respective positions, focusing on central disputed issues instead of unnecessarily prolix narratives. Dr. Helena masterfully presented the case, clearly articulating chronology of discovery of infidelities through accidentally found secret chip, subsequent professionally conducted investigation photographically documenting multiple encounters with 3 nominally identified different lovers, financial analysis demonstrating use of marital resources financing illicit extramarital relationships, robust legal argumentation fundamenting request for disproportionate property division based on irrefutably demonstrated exclusive guilt through extensive documentary evidence, attached to voluminous initial petition. Dr. Ruggiero predictably responded aggressively, attacking evidence-obtaining methodology, alleging that the secret chip was illegally accessed, violating Juliana's constitutional privacy, hired private investigator conducted unauthorized surveillance, potentially configuring criminal persecution, property transfers executed by me during months preceding divorce, notification constituted intentional property transfer fraud anticipating imminent judicial processes. Initial petition contained excessively emotional dramatic language destined to manipulate court feelings instead of objectively impartially presenting facts. Additionally, he inflammatorily argued that alleged extramarital relationships were completely invented or dramatically exaggerated by controlling paranoid husband seeking to justify calculated property theft and destruction of independently financially successful wife's professional reputation that threatened his fragile masculine ego. Judge Silvia patiently listened to both presentations without interrupting, occasionally noting critical observations, facial expression maintaining impenetrable professional neutrality, revealing nothing about internally forming impressions. When both attorneys concluded initial arguments, she leaned forward examining documents spread over large table while tense silence filled small claustrophobic hearing room. Preliminary. I'll address Dr. Rogerio's allegations regarding legality of evidence obtaining. The phone chip was accidentally discovered during routine handling of purse that Mr. Ricardo had legitimately gifted to his wife. Therefore, there was no intentional privacy invasion or unauthorized search. Once a suspicious object elaborately hidden in amateurishly sewn false compartment was discovered, Mr. Ricardo had reasonable right to investigate content, considering the secret nature of concealment strongly suggesting illicit activities. Regarding physical surveillance conducted by professionally licensed private investigator, such practice is perfectly legal when executed in public spaces without private property invasion or use of unauthorized electronic listening devices, she pronounced authoritatively, firmly. Regarding allegations of property transfer fraud, I'll carefully review chronology and legitimacy of each financial transaction executed preceding formal divorce notification. If one determined transfers were legitimately motivated by genuinely adequately documented business needs instead of fraudulent intention to hide assets anticipating property division, such transactions will remain valid. However, if evidence suggests deliberate malicious property concealment, I'll order reversal of questionable transfers and apply appropriate sanctions according to prevailing legislation. Finally, regarding substantial merit of the case involving allegations of systematic prolonged adultery, presented photographic evidence appears superficially substantial, demonstrating worrying behavioral pattern consistent with multiple marital infidelities. However, I reserve definitive judgment until examining complementary evidence, hearing testimonies of involved parties, and evaluating credibility of additional witnesses that both parties intend to present during complete procedural instruction, Judge Sylvia methodically concluded, establishing procedural parameters for subsequent phases of inevitably prolonged, complex, contentious process. The following 6 months unfolded in a vertiginous whirlwind of multiple hearings, extensive depositions, specialized technical expert examinations, elaborate legal maneuvers from both parties attempting to establish progressive tactical advantages. Juliana initially maintained categorical denial of alleged infidelities, despite irrefutable photographic evidence, creatively but implausibly arguing that documented encounters with Marcelo, Andre, and Roberto were legitimate professional meetings discussing potential architectural collaborations, that hotel entries were to participate in corporate networking events organized in internal conference halls, that photographically captured kisses and embraces were normal, Brazilian cultural greetings between close professional colleagues without inappropriate romantic connotations. The absurdly transparent explanations convinced nobody involved in the process, including her own attorney, who eventually advised abandoning unsustainable defensive strategy, admitting extramarital relationships, but arguing they were understandable consequences of emotionally neglectful marriage, where workaholic emotionally absent husband failed to meet her legitimate affective needs, justifying seeking them externally. Mauricio and Dr. Helena strategically counterattacked, presenting testimonies from my work colleagues attesting consistent dedication to marriage, despite intense professional demands, extensive documentation of regular romantic gestures, including expensive gifts, surprise trips, loving messages frequently sent during workdays demonstrating continuous emotional investment in relationship. Testimonies from mutual friends confirming I never demonstrated negligent or emotionally distant behavior but contrarily regularly expressed admiration and support for Juliana's professional ambitions, sacrificing personal time to accommodate her schedule. Additionally, forensic accounting expert examination conducted by judicially appointed independent specialist meticulously examined financial records, clearly identifying Juliana's spending pattern financing extramarital encounters through her business corporate credit card totaling approximately $83,000 over 3 years, including hotel reservations, expensive restaurants, various gifts, acquired presumably for lovers. The most dramatic, devastating, definitively transformative moment of the entire process occurred during Juliana's personal deposition when Dr. Helena incisively interrogated her about specific messages preserved from the secret chip where she cruelly ridiculed my personal habits, physical appearance, professional dedication, directly confronted with her own digitally preserved words, authentically verified through expertly verified metadata. Juliana couldn't maintain calculated cold composure, emotionally collapsing in convulsive crying finally. Completely admitting she maintained multiple simultaneous extramarital relationships during years, that she used marital resources, systematically financing infidelities, that she deliberately calculatedly betrayed my trust, without significant remorse, until being publicly confronted with consequences. The complete admission, officially recorded in judicial minutes, definitively sealed the case's fate, establishing her exclusive guilt, indubitably. 3 weeks after dramatic, revealing deposition, Judge Sylvia pronounced comprehensive 50s judicial sentence thoroughly founded on precedent jurisprudence and meticulous analysis of evidence, extensively presented during complete procedural instruction. The decision was overwhelmingly favorable to me. Contentious divorce was granted with specific cause of indubitably proven adultery. Property division was established disproportionately, granting me 75% of all assets acquired during marriage, while Juliana would receive only 25%, reflecting her exclusive guilt and improper use of marital resources. Financing illicit extramarital relationships. Family Construction Company was recognized as protected premarital patrimony whose value growth during marriage was primarily attributed to my dedicated work instead of her substantial contributions. Moral damages indemnification was partially granted an amount of $250,000, compensating intense emotional suffering caused by calculatedly perpetrated prolonged systematic betrayals. Additionally, surprisingly, Judge Sylvia determined that Juliana fully reimbursed the $83,000 provably spent with corporate credit card financing extramarital encounters, representing misappropriation of resources legitimately destined for business professional expenses, ordered her to pay integral procedural costs, including adverse parties' attorney fees, totaling approximately $120,000 additional dollars, considering case complexity and extensive time dedicated by my attorneys. The sentence represented complete, devastating, absolutely transformative victory, validating patient discipline strategy I had meticulously followed during entire 6 months, pretending ignorance while building robust, impenetrable legal case, instead of emotionally, impulsively confronting, when I initially discovered betrayals through the accidentally found secret chip. Juliana desperately appealed the decision, arguing that the judge had been excessively punitive, establishing such drastically property division and granting substantial moral damages but Superior Court almost entirely upheld sentence, only modestly reducing indemnification to $200,000. Considering precedent jurisprudence, establishing reasonable limits for moral compensations in similar cases, the final decision transitioned to final judgment, becoming definitive, irrevocable approximately 8 months after initial preliminary hearing, when the process officially began. During prolonged, stressful, contentious period, I maintained physical and emotional distance from Juliana, communicating exclusively through attorneys as strategically advised, focusing professional energy on construction company that continued normally prosperously operating despite simultaneously experienced intense personal turbulence. Surprisingly, unexpectedly, the traumatic divorce process had unanticipated positive consequence. I met Daniel Augusto, 44-year-old veterinarian owner of clinic specializing in large animals, during a support group meeting for divorced people that I began weekly attending per insistent recommendation from therapist hired to process emotional trauma from betrayals and subsequent exhorting judicial process. Daniel was a kind, empathetic, genuinely interested man in listening to others' experiences without judging or prematurely offering unsolicited advice. Possessed kind green eyes that had known deep suffering of their own through traumatic divorce 3 years earlier, but chose to maintain compassion instead of hardening into bitter protective defensive. We developed friendship gradually, carefully, respectfully over months, sharing vulnerabilities honestly, discovering compatible fundamental values, and surprisingly aligned life perspectives, despite completely different professional backgrounds. Daniel possessed mature, rare emotional intelligence in men of our generation, typically socialized to repress feelings, charming, self-deprecating sense of humor that made me genuinely laugh for first time in months. Infinite patience, understanding that Rebuilding trust after devastating betrayal required generous time not measured by unrealistic, impatient expectations. Our relationship naturally, organically evolved from platonic friendship to gradual romantic interest without unnecessary rush or undue pressure. First kiss occurring spontaneously, unexpectedly during tranquil nocturnal walk in park, softly illuminated by decorative lights when we were deeply conversing about vulnerability's future fears. 2 years after divorce definitively finalizing, Daniel and I discreetly, intimately married in small, meaningful beach ceremony. Jury's golden sunset with only 20 carefully selected guests, including Mauricio as emotional best man, Dr. Helena and investigator Carlos as honored guests representing fundamental instruments of deserved, restored justice. My mother Marguerite crying joyful tears seeing her son finally finding genuine authentic happiness after years of previous destructive, toxic relationship, exchanged vows, emphasized radical honesty, complete transparency, constant open communication as unwavering foundations of new marriage, consciously built on painful lessons learned through devastating past experiences. Daniel never made me feel guilty for reasonable precautions or occasional need for emotional reassurance when residual insecurities from previous trauma unexpectedly surfaced, patiently understanding that deep emotional scars heal slowly, gradually, through reliability, consistency, repeatedly demonstrated over prolonged time. As for Juliana, I learned through mutual acquaintances that she faced substantial professional social consequences after scandalous divorce became public. Knowledge through discreet but sufficient local journalistic coverage to ruin carefully cultivated professional reputation during years. Her architectural office lost important corporate clients who canceled contracts, alleging ethical character concerns after public revelations of systematic adultery and misappropriation of business resources, financing extramarital relationships. Andre abruptly terminated relationship when he discovered through judicial process that he was only one of 3 simultaneous lovers instead of exclusive romantic partner she claimed to be. Marcelo equally quickly disappeared when he realized she wasn't an unhappy married woman seeking to escape oppressive matrimony but a calculated manipulator maintaining multiple parallel relationships systematically, deceiving all involved, including himself. Eventually, approximately 3 years after divorce, finalizing, Juliana sold architectural office for substantially reduced value below market due to urgent financial necessity, covering accumulated debts including moral damages, indemnification owed to me, and extensive procedural costs. Moved to a different, smaller city, attempting to restart professional life away from permanently stained, ruined reputation by widely disseminated public scandal. I felt no sadistic satisfaction imagining her difficulties, because true revenge doesn't reside in causing proportional pain to others, but in living well authentically, prosperously transforming, destroying trauma into shareable useful wisdom for others, traversing similar devastating situations. I began regularly volunteering, advising other men, traversing traumatic divorces, involving marital infidelities through local non-governmental organization specialized in supporting victims of matrimonial betrayal. Sharing personal experience not to glorify suffering or encourage revenge, but to concretely demonstrate that recovery is possible. Justice, although slow, is achievable. Reconstruction after devastation is viable with disciplined strategy, cultivated patience, and adequate professional resources. Each helpman partially represented redemption from experienced suffering, transforming individual pain into significant beneficial collective purpose. At 46 years old, with life radically wonderfully different from existence I imagined at 42. When I discovered the secret chip elaborately hidden in Juliana's purse, I paradoxically recognized that devastating betrayal, although extremely painful, was involuntary catalyst forcing transformative growth that would remain indefinitely dormant within dangerously normalized, mediocre, comfortable zone of toxic relationship. I don't thank for betrayal nor completely forgive Juliana's actions, but I serenely recognize that strategically overcome adversity substantially strengthened character, clarified authentic fundamental values, taught profound lessons about importance of verified trust instead of blindly granted, absolute necessity of rationally protecting own interests. Even when emotions impulsively scream for immediate confrontation, value of disciplined patience, executing calculated strategy, instead of emotionally destructively reacting. That fateful afternoon when I discovered the elaborately hidden secret chip simultaneously marks devastating end of previous naive life, based on blind trust, and challenging beginning of consciously rebuilt existence founded on appropriately cautious discernment. Juliana may have stolen years of life through systematic lies, wasted substantial financial resources financing elaborate betrayals, temporarily broken spirit through deep humiliation, but ultimately completely failed an implicit objective of permanently, irreversibly destroying me, because I strategically, rationally, relentlessly chose to fight for deserved justice instead of resignedly accepting role of permanently defeated victim. I was reborn stronger, wiser, more cautiously optimistic from ashes of her betrayal. Like a determined phoenix rebuilding life authentically this time, without naive illusions, but with realistic hope, founded on painful experiences, transformed into applicable, practical wisdom. The discovery of the secret chip was involuntary gift, cruelly disguised. It revealed necessary, devastating truth, liberating me from destructive, fraudulent relationship that slowly, silently, imperceptibly consumed my essence over years, while maintaining deceptive facade of marital normalcy. Without that accidental discovery, I would probably indefinitely continue living elaborate lie, wasting additional precious, irreplaceable years, potentially losing opportunity to find Daniel and finally experience genuine, authentic, mutually respectful love. Therefore, paradoxically, perversely, I owe reluctant gratitude to Juliana's negligence, leaving Perse abandoned that specific afternoon, allowing accidental discovery that initiated chain of transformative events culminating in deserved liberation, realized justice, and authentically, consciously rebuilt happiness. If you're traversing similar situation of recently discovered matrimonial betrayal, allow me to offer advice founded on intensely lived painful experience. Don't impulsively, emotionally, immediately confront. Breathe deeply, calmly process information, discreetly consult specialized professionals, methodically build robust legal strategy, meticulously document evidence, strategically protect property interests before initiating formal procedures. Emotional revenge satisfies momentarily, primitively, but strategically executed, patiently disciplined, justice produces superior, lasting results. You deserve not only to confront betrayer, but to guarantee appropriate consequences are completely applied while integrally protecting your future. If you enjoyed this story of discovered betrayal, patient strategy, realized justice, and transformative reconstruction, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions.